in the sense that she's so cool, and I don't know. It's inexplicable to because
inexplicable to her even.
And Shabana, Smita Patil and all, we know why they are great and how they are great and how they have become who they have become, and also the reason why their cinema resonates, and all of that we understand. But someone like a Sridevi who's done cinema, much of which is quite abhorrent in the sense that the 80s ka Jitendra films are like awful. I don't know how we watched them. We used to watch them on reruns. Video pe to, matlab, I don't know how we watched them. They were terrible films, but yet she kept shining and shining. And now you see Mom, and you see English, and you see, this is this woman who was wearing those red pedal pushers and one side mein clip and dancing in matkas and all.
So I essentially write about films of the 70s and 80s, and I love writing about them. A lot of people have asked me to review, etc., etc. A, so I don't have the skill sets, and B, I'm not so overtly interested in writing about the pros and cons of films like that, and I have a very emotional connection with films. I can't have a cold judgment of films and analysis. So I started writing like that indulgence in those films that I grew up watching.
And of course we are here today for Janvi and Amborish, so let's just start the session. I'm very keen to hear about his experiences about Sridevi's younger days.
I'm Janvi and this is Amborish. Amborish has written recently a book on Sridevi, but not the Sridevi as we know her from her Bollywood years, but a much younger Sridevi who started young and has worked in the South Indian film industry for many years before she landed and became big in Bollywood. So his book details her life and her work and her journey during that period. And I'm going to allow him to talk, but I'll just ask him some questions and about his experiences of working on this book. And all of us are here because of Sridevi only. So Amborish, the idea I had of Sridevi is basically that she's a child actress, but her first image to me was of Lakshmi's sister in Julie. Okay, uske pehle I had not seen her. So and then of course Sadma, which was like a sort of a breakthrough film, because in those days when all the heroines were wearing all these frilly 80s jhumkas and permed hair, Sridevi was wearing this, I don't know what it's called, but that's South Indian sort of this thing. So Sadma was a very different sort of film for the time. And
from what she was doing in Hindi.
Yeah, and also from what we were used to from heroines as well. So how did the idea of this book start for you? So how did you decide to focus on this particular aspect of her career? And how was the initial journey, finding stuff out?
So I had written a book with Rupa Publications before.
That was on Bollywood.
Yeah. It was a book called In a Cult of Their Own, which was a collection of essays on cult Hindi films that didn't do well, but eventually
became very popular.
Cult following, So then somehow after she passed away, there was immediately a call / email to me saying that, can you come up with a book in 3 months?
Okay.
I said I'm more like 3 years. I take time with my book.
Yeah.
So मुझे तो time लगेगा, because I meet people, I try and talk to people, whatever I can find. So then they reluctantly agreed, but I faced a brick wall everywhere I went. I tried to speak to stars who she had worked with, they didn't speak. Then I reached out to Mr. Boni Kapoor.
Yeah.
He at that time felt that his kids were too young and this was still too early. I'm talking about 2018, somewhere around that. So even he was not prepared. But I went down south. I said, might as well. Went to Chennai, spoke to a few journalists, tried to reach out to her family, couldn't. But in the process, I ended up watching a lot of her Tamil and Telugu films, especially Tamil films, and I was fascinated to discover a whole different actor who was more, not really confident, but she was choosing very edgy roles, very different roles which she would, she probably never got a chance to do in Bollywood. So I would say her Bollywood career she was largely unexplored.
Correct.
So when I watched these films, I thought this idea was fascinating now, because otherwise I was not able to cover her life if I'm not able to talk to the family.
Correct.
So then I thought this should be interesting, and culturally also, because I'm a Bengali, I don't understand or know any of those languages. If I'm talking about a Balachandar or a Bharati Raja, I have to understand who they represent in the history of Tamil cinema to talk about their films and her roles in those films. And Kamal Hassan, Rajnikant, we throw about these names so loosely. So being somebody from eastern part of India, to try and understand what they represented, what these stars represented, was interesting. And then of course, again we kind of refer to everything as South Indian cinema.
Correct.
But they are distinctly
different.
Malayalam cinema is very different from Telugu cinema, is very different from Tamil cinema. They have different distinctive histories, different star systems, so on and so forth. So that also took a lot of time.
That the edgy roles that she did, what could you give some examples? Because none of us have seen those films. So.
Her first grown-up sort of part, although she was barely 15, was Rajnikant's stepmother. In a film called Moondar Mudiche.
Rajnikant's stepmother.
Yeah. And it was, without giving her much of the plot, it was sort of a revenge drama.
Okay.
And she basically, Rajnikant was the adversary, and she somehow managed to get his father to get married to her so that she can become the mother.
Okay.
So it's that kind of a, so that is twisted and very edgy. This is 1976. Not really choosing also. If you read the book, you'll get to know. And if you look at her performances, if nothing else, there was sincerity. She was almost on autopilot. She didn't know any other life.
She started working at the age of 4.
Yeah, 4, 5. Like I said, she didn't know any other life. So 4-5 saal mein she was prodded into the sets, and she started doing these movies where she was doing 2 to 3 shifts a day.
I think her mother passed away during Lamhe.
Rajeshwari or Rajeshwaramma, that's the mother. And she, in her younger days, had worked in Telugu cinema. She wanted to be a star.
And then how she graduated into Bollywood then.
Those were the days of formula filmmaking. So your filmmaking also hovered around trying to understand patterns and then to decide what your next film should be around, etc., etc., and who to cast and where. And we know all of that, and that happened in Bollywood as well. So people very quickly understood that this child is very intuitive, and she had a plump cherubic face, so looked like an angel also. So they started casting her as kids, but not the regular child artist, but the thoda sa cameo hua and all of that in a song. Not like that. I mean, she had certain, she had lines of dialogue. She spoke she had scenes with the stars, etc., etc. So her first film in Hindi was a major flop. As a heroine, as a leading lady, was a film called Solva Sawan. So Solva Sawan was
Rekha, no?
वो था राजकोट stuff. So Solva Sawan was a film called Padinar Vaidinile, which was a huge hit down south, and again very different kind of a role where there was Kamal Hassan, Sridevi and Rajnikant.
Okay.
Rajni had a very grey kind of a role. Kamal Hassan again an author back kind of role, the kind of role she was kind of thrived on in the 80s, and her playing a very rustic young girl from the village, and again a very very hard hitting kind of role. Eventually when he remade, Bharati Raja himself remade it in Hindi, the role of Kamal Hassan was played by Amol Palekar. Kulbhushan Kharbanda played the Rajnikant role, which was the negative role. But somewhere things didn't come together.
Yeah, some of the things, the tropes don't work in Hindi films. They just don't work. You may find it cool in a South Indian film, but in Hindi they just look lame doing it.
So, and in Hindi also, there were marked differences at that time. These differences had become very stark. अरे ये realistic cinema है, ये art cinema है, ये commercial है. So this couldn't belong to any club. This particular film. So it was a complete washout.
Did Raja compose music for the Hindi version?
Yeah. So Ilayaraja was the music director as well. I mean both the versions. So very interesting music, but didn't do well. They were completely forgotten.
Okay, I don't know whether this was before Mr. India or after Mr. India, but I remember one story where they said that she's too arrogant and she doesn't want to work with those Jitendra films.
Very specifically, if you watch those films, they were the hallmarks of Telugu cinema during that period. So that eventually evolved into what we today see in RRR or any of the Mahesh Babu films and all of that. So that was the pitch. So in that pitch, in the 80s, those were the kind of roles where the heroine was just, just the looks.
Her transcending back into coming into Bollywood.
So
ultimately, she reduced the number of films there, right?
37. She didn't have a break of a year, right? Or even a few. So she was probably, I don't know, I can't vouch for it, but by my knowledge, she was probably the only actor in the whole world who you see growing bit by bit on screen, right? She was an adolescent and suddenly she's playing lead roles, right? So that must have taken its own toll. So I don't know when she was, in her 30s or playing those roles in Bollywood, how much of her mind she was using.
It seems to be like the way we talk about, say, Bachchan. A lot of people say, oh, Bachchan was not he didn't do he was always a star. Whatever film he did, whatever. This is what many people have said. But with Sridevi also it's the same. She's so large. She's been so larger than life for so much of the time. And she's so, I would say, glamorous. She's above herself. So whatever role she's playing, she's always a little more than that.
At that time, there was a certain kind of cinema that everybody was watching.
Correct.
Okay? So even if somebody wanted to choose something different while staying within the ambit of commercial cinema, like Tamil cinema, there's a very important distinction. When you speak to anybody who is a Tamil cinema buff, they'll say we never had a parallel cinema movement.
Do you think there was, in your interaction with Kamal Haasan, did that ever come up? Or, I'm sure it won't be it won't be out there, he won't say it out loud. But did you catch a sense of competition between them because you spoke to him for the book?
You could gauge that obviously he would have regarded her as a competition in a manner of speaking because they are classmates, so to speak. No, but
Nayantara doesn't get an author-backed.
Nayantara is Tamil.
Yeah, but she doesn't get an author-backed role right now.
Yeah.
What Madhuri Dixit could manage
or
with
even
Beta and
like
now Sridevi could manage later on. Chalbaz was totally an author-backed role.
But I'll tell you what could be the reason also. When in Sridevi's films after Bachchan, there is a style of her talking and her behaving which is very much like Bachchan.
She was pulling off.
Which is seen in Rekha also.
There's a film called Johnny with Rajinikanth. Trust me, if there is one film that you want to watch, a feel-good film of Sridevi in her early days, see her performance and at the same time be entertained in a very good film. Is a film called Johnny, where Rajni is, you have never seen Rajni so mild-mannered. She actually proposes to Rajni for a film in the early 80s to show that in a popular film, and she does that in such a beautiful way and a subtle kind of way. I mean, she was a goddess and she looked like a goddess in that, and without all the other kind of histrionics that you see her doing in Hindi films, she was very different. There was a film called Padinar Vaidinile, which is at the age of 16. Padinar is 16, so which later in Hindi was Solvasa, 16. So that is a beautiful film. If you see the Hindi one is not bad either, but the Tamil one is sublime. The performance of Rajni, the performance of Kamal, and what Sridevi did despite two very strong performances, how she made her presence felt. That was her first film fare, by the way. These people really helped. I mean, Bharadwaj Rangan really helped in understanding a lot of things. Mohan Raman was a big help. Chitra Lakshmanan, another film historian and journalist, was a big help. Kavitalaya Krishnan, who was one of the mentees of Balachandar. Kavitalaya is Balachandar's studio.
Okay.
So he was one of the people who learned there at his feet. So he really helped me understand a lot of things.